Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to this Region 12 Board of Education meeting, the Education Committee portion of our meeting, Monday, November 14, 2016. Rebecca, can you take attendance, please?
Anthony Amato. Here. Valerie Anderson. Alan Brown. Here. Gregory Cava. Rebecca Devine, I'm here. Michelle Gora. Here. James Hirschfield.
Here.
Stephanie Kolnick. Here. Jennifer Pody. Lisa Roush.
Here.
Am I saying that right?
Roush.
Roush. Lisa Roush. Michael Sinatra. Here. Peter Tagley. Here.
Okay, we have 3 members absent, so we have a quorum. Thank you. Opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Is there anyone who wants to address the board? Any member of the public want to address the board? All right, not seeing anyone. I'll move on. Consent agenda, which is our special meeting minutes of November 2nd, 2016. Is there anyone who desires to remove anything from this consent agenda? All right, seeing no one, the consent agenda is approved. Thank you. Report of the chair. I have no report tonight. I'd like to try to move this along. Superintendent's report, Dr. Costantino.
Yes, a couple of things. I was this morning at a I was at a breakfast for Connecticut Council of Municipalities. Selectman Mark Lyon was there, many selectmen from the state, and it is a group called BEST. It's their conference, but they invited some superintendents. I'm involved with them. BEST standing for bringing together stakeholders, bringing something stakeholders together. I'll think of the E later, I'll yell it out. And so anyway, they're really working on all of the things we talk about, of being efficient, being effective, the fiscal economy of the state, trying to put together some strategies that we can do to get things moving. A lot of talk about, bringing people back to Connecticut. A lot of the things that we're doing in marketing and public relations, talking about transportation, talking about taxes, all of those things. So it is the second time that we met as a group in this BEST, bringing every stakeholder together. That's what it is. And so it is very interesting, and I think it's good to have a voice there. There's a lot of people from Washington there, and it just, not Washington, from Hartford, and it's good to have our voice heard. It's good to have what we're experiencing here, and that they're experiencing the same kinds of things all around the state. One of the things that was very interesting to me was, just as an aside, Region 11 is doing this. They are also in a very similar situation to we are, where we have 3 districts and small schools. 11 is Scotland, and I don't remember the other 2.
Basra.
Is that where it is?
I don't know.
Maybe. What? I can find out. But anyway, they have like parallel groups going on of how to do things, to continue as a region, to not continue as a region, and just they have a lot of different exploratory groups working. So it's interesting, it'd be interesting to hear what they're doing too, just to get an idea. So it's just nice to hear that, a lot of different districts have a lot of similar problems. Do you know which they are now? Hampton, yes. I think Scotland and...
Yep, Scotland. Wait,
Chaplin, yes.
Chaplin, Hampton, Scotland.
Yes. And I assume that's on the other side of the river, in the north. So yeah, so it's just interesting. So I think it's good to have a voice there. I think it's always good to have Region 12 represented, and so I'll continue to keep you updated on that. I sent you all 2 different emails. You may think they're the same, on the legislative breakfasts that are going to be happening. One is December 7th, one is December 9th. So I just wanted to clarify, because they look exactly the same. The December 7th is the one in Ed Advance for the Litchfield County group, And the December 9th is the one for the Western County group in Sandy Hook School. So you can go to either one. Yeah, 7:30 a.m. So it's a Wednesday and a Friday. If you can go, but because I always think it's really good. First of all, you make connections with other school board members. You make connections with the legislators that represent us. You hear about the different advocacies that and different topics that are going to be in the legislative session. So it's very interesting. Representative Sharkey was there today, and he is the Speaker of the House, who is the lame duck. He didn't run, but he was in charge of the Moore Commission that has worked in Connecticut to really look at efficient and effective ways to do business. His committee, the only thing they really got going so far is the regional calendar. But he talked about the fact that in next year's budget, that municipal aid will probably be cut. So people should expect that municipal aid to the towns will definitely be on the chopping block. That's 23% of the state's budget. So that was interesting. So if you can go to the breakfast, it really is. And you can go to either one. And if you want to see the new Sandy Hook School, go to Sandy Hook. That's the Friday. That's the one I'm going to go to.
When you say municipal aid, would that affect us?
Well, it would,
Educational aid?
it's not the educational piece, it's the town pieces. So it's the monies to the towns. They said that in the past couple of years, they've really hit the other areas, and education, as you know, has been hit. So he's thinking that, the towns are going to get hit. And the town people were not really happy about hearing that because they feel that although you may not have hit the towns in the past, with all the unfunded mandates that come down, and they listed like 5 or 6 of them, they are being hit in just a different way. So it's an interesting group to be part of. And then we have a retirement. Cheryl Ayers retiring from WPS, wonderful educational assistant there. And I just came, just so you know, from WestCon, where Emily Rue, who is our special education department chair or instructional leader, and she received her doctorate. She defended her dissertation on the impact of why it just left my head, not mindset, thank you, growth mindset on self-efficacy and motivation in special education students. Emily Rue, and she works at both now Burnham and Booth Free. She's fabulous, 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 and she also is the instructional leader for special ed. So it's really wonderful to have our staff receiving their doctorates. So that's where I was. I was one of her advisors. And so that is my report.
All right, thank you. I'll just say myself, with regard to Cheryl Ayer, she's been a longtime employee of the region, and she will be missed, so I wish her well in her retirement. And with regard to the meetings that you've been attending that you described, insofar as public education, I'm sure is the largest part of all of these towns' budgets.
Yes.
It probably is a good idea for the schools to be represented by you and to hear what's going on. I assume their education budgets will be the subject of discussion as
Yes.
time goes on the road.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for the superintendent? All right, thank you. All right, item 6, VHS. Joan Temple and Heidi Edel. Good evening.
Introduce our guest this evening. Joan Temple, who is the library media specialist here at Shepaug, is going to talk about her experience as she coordinates VHS courses for students. We have dozens of students taking VHS courses, and so you're going to hear about that. We also have Mrs. Heidi Adele, who is a teacher here at Shepaug, but also a teacher on VHS. I know that several students were invited, so you'll have an opportunity to hear student input as well. So I hope you find this information to be helpful. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you know, we partner with the Virtual High School Collaborative to offer our students the opportunity to supplement core, honors, and elective courses. Students that seek to be academically challenged or want to earn college credit have access to one of the largest selections of AP courses available through Virtual High School. The unique blended environment also offers self-motivated students the opportunity to pursue their passions or special interests with such courses as astronomy or oceanography, with access to more than 250 semester-long and year-long courses. This year, Shepaug is able to offer VHS courses to 30 students per semester. Let me just show you what they're taking. These are our courses right now. There may be some more added this spring. So we have 23 students taking 25 different courses right now. This is actually a smaller number of course titles than we've had in the past. It varies from year to year, depending on what the interest of the students. 11 of the 25 courses are AP. So there's a breakdown. In the red, you see the general courses, 14 general courses. And then we have the 11 AP courses, AP Chemistry, AP English Language and Composition, AP Human Geography, and AP Physics this year. Shepaug currently has 2 site coordinators. I'm one of them, and I work with the majority of the VHS students. We also have Diane Robbins, who is one of our math teachers, and she is a soon-to-be certified physics teacher, and she is working with our AP Physics students.
I'm sorry, Joan, what did you describe yourself? A site creator?
Site coordinator.
Site coordinator.
Every virtual high school school has a site coordinator.
Thank you.
And our role is to monitor student progress, to take care of any technical glitches or difficulties, to communicate with the VHS teachers, if need be, and to be a general advocate for our VHS students. We send out progress reports to students, parents, and the appropriate guidance counselors on a weekly basis. And we also input all the final grades we take them from VHS, directly from VHS, put them into PowerSchool. So the number one prerequisite for being a VHS student is self-motivation. It takes a lot of work, as I'm sure our students will tell you. Although students have to check in at the beginning of their VHS period with us here in the library, they're basically on their own, and there's no day-to-day monitoring. So every student completes a student orientation at the beginning when they first sign up for virtual high school, and it outlines the requirements, and those are the hours expected for study outside of the day, outside of the classroom. So you can see 10 to 12 weeks for AP courses. We have a VHS page on the school website. It resides actually on the counseling page. So this gives you more information about virtual high school should you want to look up anything on your own, or if you have a student that's questioning. Students can access the virtual high school platform from here, the calendar for the semester, deadlines, that type of thing. So that is available. So, Heidi Adele will talk a little bit about the other side, the teacher side of virtual high school.
Yes, so you might be wondering how it works, why the site coordinator, what's the role of the site coordinator versus the teacher. So I'm a teacher for the VHS because it allows our district to have our foot in the door. So basically the way it works is the teachers who teach the classes participate in the consortium so that a lot of classes can be offered. I have yet to have a student from Shepaug. One semester, Mr. Kava's daughter was taking my class, but a different section of it. So when I first started, German was a high needs area, and actually right now I'm teaching Introduction to French Language and Culture. Before it was Introduction to German Language and Culture. So I wanted to show you my classroom so you could kind of get an idea of what that looks like and hopefully answer some questions along the way. And then maybe if you have comments to add, you know, what's different about your experience online, because not all the classrooms look the same. I mean, they look very similar. So this is my classroom. Not all online classes are created equally. I know that because I've taken a bunch of them myself. And the nice thing about the virtual high school is that there is a blueprint, a curricular blueprint, so that the courses are pretty much outlined in the same way. You have a student orientation that every student takes, and then it feels the same, more or less, right?
Yeah, the two courses that I take are, they fall into almost a formula. Every week has a
There's
very
a
specific
blueprint.
structure.
And that, actually, recently I got something in one of my journals, you know, my educator journals, about what makes a successful online class, and that was number one, is it has to have some kind of structure, curricular structure. So if they create a new course, they have this curricular structure set into place, and the teachers come, and then they're able to create the curriculum according to that structure, so that, you know, they're not just making a random course. For me as a teacher, I can't go changing my course without the okay of the online environment, because if not, I'd be doing one thing and someone else teaching another section would have a completely different course. So I have to do requests and things like that. So some of the main ingredients to the course are the news area. So here, let's see, it's not my computer, let's get used to it. It sort of depends. Sometimes I put in a nice little video, or I make a video myself to explain something that is really important. A lot of these things up here remain the same from one class to the next. So the course home, lessons, discussions, Dropbox, class list, quizzes. So there's different ways you can submit your work. For example, my students usually have a discussion once a week, and they'll have, in the lessons area, here I'll give you an example. So, there we go. This week it's, do we have a discussion this week? No, that was last week. Let me go to, I have to stand in front, sorry. So, yeah, this is this week. And this week the discussion is about education in France and la francophonie. So students will go in there and they'll read all the instructions, and they'll know that they need to read these articles and then go into the discussion area, and their first post is, here's what I think about this because, you know, providing evidence. And then the discussion is, you respond a certain number of times in a certain way, with, you know, the correct etiquette and that kind of thing. And they have a week to respond. But the other types of lessons might be, right now we're working on a project that spans several weeks, where each student does a different country, or groups of students do different countries, and there's an assignment for that every week. There's things that can be deposited in Dropboxes, and that means the assignment would be maybe on a Word document, and they have to give their answers, and then they plop it in the Dropbox with the answers. Quizzes, this course has some quizzes. The German course I taught before didn't. Basically, it's just answer these questions, and then I go look at the answers and see if they're correct. It's just different types of things. There's a blog wiki component in this course, not necessarily in every course. Is there something in the courses you're taking, maybe science, that wouldn't be in my course?
The toolbar right across the top.
Same.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
And it can look different, you know, I can make it look different. I can add different links inside the discussions. Yeah, and the grading area probably looks the same for students. For me, I would click on here and you would see all the grades my students have, so I'm not going to do that. But if it were his, it would, you know, order his grades, and then you can see the comments that I make whenever I grade. Oh, sorry, but you didn't do this correctly. And maybe I put a 0 just to get someone's attention, or I'd make a comment, please resubmit, you know, whatever kinds of comments that you normally make in a grade book. Do you have a lot of feedback from your teachers?
Yeah, everything you submit, they, if I'd say 2 to 5 sentences.
Oh, really? You
solid.
give feedback, okay.
Especially in the English course.
Right.
From chemistry, they'll break down every problem that you get wrong. The problem set is really nice, and you just have it in a list. assignments and then what they said about it. It's super helpful.
Why don't you introduce yourself to the board and tell us who you are and tell us what you're taking?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure to be interactive, I completely.
yeah, that's
need
fine.
to introduce you.
Hi, I'm Martin Meyer. I'm taking AP Chemistry and AP Language Composition. So, yeah, it's a lot of work. Usually I just go home on Saturday and I just plow through as much of it as I can. But a way that they get it so that you have to be consistently active in the classroom is you have to submit on different days. At least this is how my teacher does it.
We have a discussion requirement, for example, that you have to discuss throughout the week. You can't just go in on Saturday morning and say, okay, I read someone else's post and that's it. You know, it's supposed to be a discussion, not a,
Yeah.
that's the idea.
Yeah, sure.
I think it depends on the nature of
K-
the assignment.
Martin, can you comment for the benefit of the Board of Education who aren't in the classrooms, your impressions of this as a teaching mode? Is,
Like, okay, like compared to a regular classroom, right? So,
well, not necessarily compared. What do you just think of it as? Is it beneficial to you? Do you think it's something that we should continue? Not that we're going to discontinue, but just appreciate hearing your comments about it.
okay. So I think Mrs. Temple really touched on it when she said it's super self-motivated. So for someone like me who it might be slightly insane and goes really in-depth into things, I might actually overwork myself, but it gives me the conduit to explore it to the level that I want. The content is there. It's really up to the student how much you want to go into it. So if you want to learn a course, this is an excellent way to do it, unless you're not self-motivated. And those are the kinds of students I'd worry about, because if you're not, it's really easy to fall behind. These courses keep going. It's really about you submitting those assignments yourself. But yeah.
That's something I wanted to touch on briefly.
Thank you.
I think, I have the experience from the other end where I'm trying to reach out to site coordinators and figure out if a student hasn't turned something in, or maybe it's their first online class, because mine is a semester course, even though it's a lot of work, because like you said, it's completely self-motivated. If they fall behind, it happens quickly. It kind of snowballs. So I reach out to people. I think here at Shepaug, we're pretty lucky because there's 2 people, hands on deck, and there's a lot of teachers, and the students have a lot of places to turn to, and I can see the difference between that and some of the bigger environments where it's hard to get a counselor or a site coordinator's attention. And, I know that if Joan has an issue with someone taking a class that is anyway related to what I'm teaching, she'll come find me, So that's an advantage we have, I would say. Like, I have the feeling you would probably just find a teacher who can help you and ask for help.
Yeah, like for chemistry is a really hard course. Like AP Chemistry, yeah. It's
Online.
extremely difficult. We went through what we learned in sophomore year in about 3 weeks. So it's a very rigorous course, and I don't think I would have been anywhere near able to do it if we didn't have a tutor here that I could consistently consult with, make sure I was doing things right. Because most of the time I wasn't doing things right. And yeah, I've learned a lot from that. So it's as if the site provided me, and it might just be because of the nature of chemistry, but the site mostly provided me the problems I needed to address. And the school gave me the way to address those problems, if that makes sense. In English, it's a little different, because English, although rigorous, is something that I can just think through with my own brain. It's generally an easier course. But with chemistry and the more advanced sciences like physics with Mrs.
Yeah.
Robbins, that relationship, I think, is fundamental. So,
How much time do you spend, Martin, on each course? Like, over the course of the week, how much time do you spend?
I'd say their estimate of 10 to 12 hours is pretty accurate. Yeah.
It's easy to spend more time, and the same for the teachers. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Martin how that compares, you're taking some APs here as well, correct?
Yeah.
Could you find that the amount of time that you're spending is comparable or more on those pages? I know the calendar is a little different, but.
Yeah, I would say I probably spend the same amount, because although I may seem to have less homework in my other AP classes, I also am using the period when I would be doing the VHS kind of to do other work. And I prefer to do the VHS at home when I can really just isolate myself and study. So yeah, I'd say they're almost exactly comparable.
Yeah, Michelle, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to also ask, because this is a new pick with the chemistry, that was new, Beth, if you could tell us a little bit about how that works and how that's working for you. I mean, you touched on it, but how many times do you meet with the, if you have somebody coming in to do that training, and when does that happen?
He's here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And what we'll do is Tuesday, if it's, everything's due Tuesday at midnight. If you don't get in on Tuesday at midnight, you're doomed. Okay? So what will happen is over the weekend, Josh and I, Josh is the other kid taking AP chemistry, we'll try and work on these problems, right? And then on Tuesday, if we still don't know what we're doing, we're able to meet with Mr. Gransky, and he's able to help us out, get us through it, help us on the test, so that we can do well when we go home and try at it, right? On Thursday is what we've decided to do is we do the lab. So every week in AP Chemistry, there's a big lab. And this is the way of creating a hands-on experience when you're working through the internet. And Mr. Gransky will help us understand, what exactly is happening in this lab, make sure we don't explode the school, and things like that. Wednesday would be generally, because it's the first day of the week, you're only looking through the lessons and you're like, I really have no idea what this concept is about. And that's what you'd ask Mr. Gransky about. But I'd say the most productive days would be Thursday and Tuesday.
And is that happening during the day or after school?
After school.
Michael?
I guess the first question is to Joan Temple. I know you had mentioned that the number of courses that you showed us is actually gone down this year compared to maybe previous years, but I'm wondering if the number of students has actually risen, stayed the same?
The number of students has gone up. It's just the variety of courses has decreased. We have more kids taking AP and fewer kids taking the general ed courses. But I looked at the stats today, and I didn't really see any sort of trend, because we've had the VHS now we started in 2013 to 14, and we had 11 AP that year and 12 general. In 2014-15, we had no APs, just 10 general. And then last year, we had 5 APs, 17 general. So it's kind of all over the map. It depends on the student body and what they're interested in.
Sure. My next question is to Madame Adel. You're kind of in a unique position as an instructor on VHS, because the course that you're offering on VHS is also a course that I know you teach here.
No,
Or are they so different that...
it's a semester-long introduction to language and culture. So it's a lot of Francophone and French culture. There's not a whole lot of language. It's more like to get students' appetite whet for continuing the language. And they have it in all languages, or not all languages, several languages. I know they have Chinese, Russian, I believe. I taught the German one before. Italian. So students take that sometimes because maybe they're thinking about trying a new language in college, and they take a semester. I think it counts as a humanities credit. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay, so the typical student then would be going on in their own high school to take the language.
Yes, it doesn't conflict. No.
And would it be French 1 that they'd be going into?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the students I have from other schools who take it are taking it maybe because they weren't able to take language before, or they took another language and it's just for fun. They're seniors, they have room for an elective. I mean, no one in our school has taken that French class. I had someone try the German class because we don't offer German, so we don't want it to conflict for sure. The idea is not for the students to take classes that we offer here, rather for them to be able to take classes. And the fact that they just need teachers to be part of the consortium so that it exists. You know, like if they want to offer a new class, someone has to create it. And in fact, I've been changing the curriculum quite a bit in the French class ever since I started teaching it, because there were things I liked and things I didn't. But basically, it's not a conflict with our school.
Have you taught the any of the AP offerings in either French or German?
No.
Through
and I
VHS?
wouldn't want to, because I teach AP French here.
Yeah, but what about AP German if they were looking for someone
It would be a
to?
lot of work. I
Yeah,
have to say,
I
to teach
imagine.
an AP class, you know, from your perspective, it's a lot of work, but to grade it and to not have that interaction, I'm not sure that I would, you know, one of the reasons I agreed to do this was because I missed German. You know, I grew up speaking German, and when I think it was basically when Pat found out I spoke German, that was kind of happened. So it was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll get to have the German, you know, again, that's really cool. And then also because I felt like that the content of that course was okay online in terms of language, like I'm not sure I'd want to teach a course where they're really supposed to be learning it all on their own for language. I think it's possible. And the key ingredient here is the self-motivation. Like all the studies about Rosetta Stone have shown that it's successful. Well, it's successful if you're a motivated learner who maybe has already learned a language, who, you know, there's conditions under which it's successful. And I think the same holds true for language. So I think the AP class, I have one student who's taking AP this year. It was a small pool, and she did not want to take it online. You know, we talked about it, and not that I wanted her to take it online, but I said, if you could take it online, would you rather take it online? She was like, no, there's no interaction. That's not what I want. So I think, you know, in a pinch, if you don't have that, it will work. And for the self-motivated learner, it's a good thing. But I mean, I prefer having the interaction with my students in the AP course.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. Very informative.
Thank you, Marty. I don't know where everybody else is.
You lucky, Mark. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Without burdening people anymore, we could have a version of this presentation on the website. You know, both within our community and for any prospective members of our community, I think there's a lot of unknowns about virtual high school, which might be helpful. Just have a little way of, thank you. I'll say it again. If there's something, yeah, a TV studio or somewhere clickable on the website to explain virtual high school in a kind of a compact way, because both within the community and I think for prospective potential members of the community, there's a lot of unknowns as far as just what we've learned, as far as how it works, what the importance of self-motivation, the comparison with a in-classroom class. And the ups and downs, and the fact that it really is a successful and rewarding experience for both the teacher and the student. That kind of thing, if we can do it concisely, I think would answer a lot of the questions, because otherwise it's just an unknown. People are like, what is that? What, doing their classes on computer? What are we, you know, that kind of mumble that happens, we could offset that would be great.
I'm definitely open for suggestions on how to do that better. I did have a breakfast last year.
Yeah, I wanted to
for-
toot her
for-
horn, because she does every time it's the beginning of the year or time to sign up, she'll do a breakfast, and usually the students are invited and they're invited to bring their families. So the information does go out that way.
Well, I was gonna say either tape a, you know, either like a, you know, like do a PowerPoint and a YouTube of a PowerPoint. I forget, I used to use software that did that, you know, presentation software, so you could have a voiceover and PowerPoint slides. So I'm sure these days there's very easy ways of doing that. Something like that could be on the internet, you know, 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minute presentation, 3-minute presentation that people could go right to, you know.
Also clip this part of the meeting as a video that's just been created. Because it'll have a teacher, a site director, and a student talking about their experience. So, you know,
I actually think that I'm pretty sure there's a VHS presentation on our YouTube channel from students from last year.
But I just think having more linked to easy to find on our menus, so people don't have to move through our
Sure.
YouTube archive.
Be happy to help.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. All right, item 7, first reading policy 6154, home. Michelle.
Yes, let me get back to my folder. So,
Oh, thank you. A while back, our homework policy was brought to our attention, concerns about homework over vacations and breaks. And we sort of discussed it a little bit as a board, and the board then asked our committee to take a look at the policy and come up with a recommendation. So what we did is looked at some sample policies from CABE as well as the homework policies from quite a few different districts. And I should also say that Michael's district, Wilton, has a homework policy that he was very familiar with as a teacher there and was sort of surprised by our policy. So that was, I think, a good part of the beginning of the conversation. So what we have here is a policy that we felt on the committee was sort of a compromise between the no homework over breaks versus a free license for homework, which you'll see the highlighted yellow section in your policy. It says that not to assign assignments that are expected to be completed during religious holiday breaks or on a weekend when there is a religious holiday. You can assign homework but cannot be due on the date after the return of the religious holiday. And of all of our breaks, what did we decide? 2 or 3 of them are religious, so it hits some of the breaks but not all of the breaks, so that's where we felt like it was a little bit of a compromise. But we're bringing this to the board for your discussion to see how you feel about this.
Did you have any input from, your committee have input from the teachers or administration on this?
No, not more than the fact that Teresa is part of the administration and is also part of our policy committee.
All right, so I assume this would mean that there'd be no homework over the Christmas break.
Well, it would mean that it couldn't be due the day you get back. So it doesn't mean that there can't be work to be done. It means that it can't be due on the day you get back. So
Could be due on Tuesday.
could be due 2 days after. You could be given the assignment like
Okay.
a week before, and you could turn it in before you go. Or students could decide to work on it over, but it just can't be due the day after.
All right. Any other questions? Is there a motion? Yes.
I just think we really have to be careful about what we consider to be a religious holiday, because, we're very narrow in our religious holidays. And, I'll just give you a perfect example. New York City now gets off for Eid and the other Muslim holidays. So I just think as our culture evolves, that this can be very difficult for some of the teachers when you don't know exactly whose holiday is when and who's celebrating what.
If I may, with that said, do you think it would make sense to, spell out, state the holidays that you're talking about?
Yeah. So I just
Well, if I may, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Why not? Then doesn't it leave it open to what are you talking about? Yes, Rebecca.
So my concern with the concept of spelling out religious holidays is that you are raising recognition of a certain set of holidays over others, and I don't think that that is the point of this. I think that maybe a potentially better approach would be to recognize that there are holidays which are recognized and during which the school is actually closed. And then there are also situations, and Pat, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this as a result of what you were just saying, where, so say a student says, well, I'm this, and I'm going to be going with my family to celebrate it, and maybe then the teacher would work with the student and say, well, you're going to be gone Friday through Sunday to do this, and I'll cut you some slack in your things due on Tuesday instead of Monday. I don't know how broad of a problem that would be, or if that would actually be a more flexible solution. What do you think?
I don't want to make any decisions. I think this would be good if we gave it to the principals and maybe they just looked it over with their staff a little bit to get a little input. Not that I don't trust Teresa and her judgment. We're making decisions for people who, who give this homework and stuff. I mean, if we didn't put religious holidays and just put, we have 2 big breaks during our school system. Like we have the winter break and we have the spring break. Homework wouldn't be due after the day we come back from winter break and the day we come back from spring break. Then to me, you're out of that religious holiday piece. I would feel more comfortable, but I just think, that should be considered. I don't know.
You mean in addition to the religious holiday?
No, I'm
No,
saying
instead of.
instead of.
I think the religious holiday part, though, has to do with, the shorter term religious holiday observance that can affect some students that maybe are, minority religions, because certainly, Christmas and Easter, we all know about. We have spring break usually over Easter and break over
Well, that's what we
Christmas.
call it, winter break
Well,
and,
yeah.
and spring break.
But they are geared towards those main Christian holidays. But we're talking about other Muslim holidays or Jewish holidays, which aren't as much a part of our calendar as they are, to begin with. So that you might have Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah or Ramadan or something that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 children are observing, and therefore either can't or I don't think they can't, but they would be very busy during their holiday that isn't one to us, and therefore they shouldn't be expected to be able to perform that night or that day, their homework duties the same way that someone who isn't observing anything on that day out of the blue for the rest of us who aren't observing those religious holidays would be expected to come prepared for an exam or to turn in an essay the next day. So I think we're looking at it more incrementally that way, and a teacher, and why we're putting it this way is that a teacher may not be aware or necessarily need to be aware if they're not a religious studies teacher or if they're not observing that holiday, unless we have it in a calendar and we have it in the policy that just to make sure, don't assign a huge test or a huge essay to be due the day after Rosh Hashanah. I don't know what that means because I don't observe, but you know what I mean. Whatever, pick a holiday that you are really out of commission for as an observer, that your peers may not be, and therefore you wouldn't be prepared to and I think we even talked about it in our policy. We're talking about short-term things. A long-term assignment, clearly that student would have the opportunity to pre-plan and get that work done before their holiday, if it were due. So we're trying, as I recall from our meetings, we're trying to not say nothing can be due the next day. Obviously, if it's an assignment that's been assigned for a month, the kid could get that done before the holiday if that happens to be due the day after the holiday. We're talking about other things that are more immediate. And hopefully that wouldn't be too much of a burden, because I think Pat's a little reticent because she's afraid there's not going to be this burden of juggling schedules.
Well, I just think, I don't want to be the person to say to AP English teachers or chemistry teachers that no assessments can be given on a return date after religious observance, because I can name 5 religious observance in September. Okay? Between Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Eid, and anything else that may, happen. So I just am concerned about this when we haven't gotten input from people who have to enact it. That's my concern. But
Michael? Yeah, it's all right. Why don't you do that?
So about a year ago, this was brought to the board, and it was brought by a board member, and there was a discussion here by board members, and it was decided at that time to take it to the policy committee. So it's not a recommendation by Teresa or anything like that. I just will present the minutes.
I don't think anybody understood. that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. So we've heard this discussion before. You sent it to the policy committee. Now they're coming back with what they've put together, and now you're having that discussion. But it's not the first time that administrators have heard, and we've talked about that before. So we're at this crossroads. I just wanted to make sure that we keep coming back and back. So you have to, if you're not comfortable, then maybe it'd go back to the committee.
Anthony?
Teresa, I just want to be clear. Are you saying then that the administrator's views were represented on the committee by you?
No, 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 no. That's exactly what I'm not saying.
Okay, well, I wasn't,
Right, right.
so to go back to the administrators now as a follow-up to this.
Right. You could take it back to the committee, and the committee then will, ask me to take it to
Okay.
the administrators, yes.
Michael?
Just a couple points that I wanted to reiterate. I know Michelle started with what we as a committee did, and again, to emphasize to the board that we did find districts that have zero homework policy as far as any modifications for religious holidays, holiday breaks, nothing. We also found a number of districts besides Wilton, which I'm obviously most familiar with, many of which are from Fairfield County, but we didn't, quite frankly, look at the entire state. We didn't look at Eastern Connecticut. We didn't look at the Hartford area. We just looked at other districts that did, in fact, have longstanding policies that do grant similar exemptions for students with for homework and major assessments following a holiday break. So we tried to craft with the language, and we can certainly talk about the language, something that would, we felt, be fair without, on the other hand, bringing down our standards, making it so that teachers couldn't assess during the month of December, for example. I mean, we're not saying that. We thought we came up with what we felt was fairly reasonable, while at the same time also recognizing that we do, while we're a small district, we do have students that are members of a religious minority, for example. We have students that are Jewish. And I think the members of the committee felt that the onus shouldn't be on the student to advocate for their religious rights. That they shouldn't have to be the one every year to go to each of their teachers and say, this is the situation, this is my religion, please don't penalize me, please grant me this right. When it's not something that the student should be asking for, it's something that I think as a courtesy we should show that we have respect and tolerance, and so we were hoping that the policy would reflect that.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. Rebecca?
Michael, you just mentioned that when you guys were talking, you were talking about dealing with a holiday break or religious break. And Alan, when you were talking, I felt like it was more about maybe days that weren't necessarily a break, or maybe not fully recognized in terms of the school calendar. I mean, and so I think that where I sit, because I agree with Pat's concerns, and in regards to trying to put a box around the concept of religion and who practices what religion. And I'm pretty sure there's not a calendar that's going to cover all of the religions. Again, and that goes back to, we have a more homogeneous population here at Region 12, but we're not completely homogeneous. And you don't necessarily know. A student doesn't necessarily have to present a certain way in order to be following a certain religion. And it could get quite challenging for a teacher to be PC and recognize all of them. I would be personally more comfortable with the administrators reviewing the policy and giving feedback to the committee so that the ones who actually have to enact it are comfortable with it. And I also would be very hesitant to want to list out any kind of specific religions.
Is the committee willing to do that, Michelle?
Absolutely. We brought it back for the board to discuss because it is challenging, and there's no law. So it's not like I'm coming to you as I usually am saying this is what state statute says. And we looked at a lot of different districts, and they all do very different things. So this is really, back to us. But I would love to have the input of the administrators. I see it's difficult because we want to recognize the student. We talked in committee about not wanting to put the onus on the students to have to always come and advocate for themselves. Yet on the other hand, if a teacher could is not allowed to have homework due the day after all religious holidays, right, that could become also challenging on both sides. So we'll have to figure out the best way through.
If you don't mind, what I was going to say after Michael spoke, what I was going to say was, I was going to ask if there was a motion to approve for a first reading, knowing that if it was approved for a first reading, it necessarily wouldn't even have to come back up at the next meeting for a second reading. It could go back to the committee, you could do this investigation, but it would be on the board. And it would be on the tote board, in other words, it would be on the queue, as opposed to just sending it back to basically do that investigation now. But if you're not opposed to that, we don't have to, nobody has to make anybody can, of course, but you don't have to make a motion to approve for a first reading, just take it back if that's what the committee's prepared to do.
I would just let everyone know it's in our queue. It's not going to get lost. So it doesn't have to go for a first reading if it's very up in the air. I'd actually rather not
Okay. Michael?
come back with something completely different for second. Usually we just tweak. We're just fixing a word or two.
Just to get back to a point that Rebecca was making earlier about, I think we're juggling kind of the workability and at the same time sensitivity to students. So let's start with the workability. I think that it sounds like it's a very complex, very difficult policy to enact and to communicate. And in my experience, it's not, as long as teachers understand, I think, what you're talking about. I think the fear would, from a teacher's perspective, since I'm a teacher, I can speak to that, would be, are you talking about once a week we're going to have a religious holiday that the students are going to be Googling, like, what is this strange, obscure religious holiday that I could use as a way to get out of doing homework? That's certainly not the intent of the policy.
No, of course.
So I think while it might seem like we're excluding by identifying what specific holidays, break periods we're talking about, that actually might be useful, I think, for making it a little bit more practical. I think many religious holidays do coincide at specific times. So, for example, the holiday that we think of as Christmas break, actually, there's 3 religions that I can think of that actually have religious observances over that break period. So that might be, for a teacher, again, you're going to want to know, what are you talking about in general that I have to think about? Sure. And maybe allay the fears of how would this play out. As a parent, I know that I think if we're trying to talk about how we're trying to be sensitive not only to religious observances, but also families' needs, I think that every parent would appreciate that, because we're trying to craft a policy that will do both of those things: respect religious differences, but also respect family time, and understand that there are certain times of the year where that might be very important. So we were hoping to start maybe on the religious side, but it may be that in practicality there may be other non-religious holidays or holidays that have become secularized, like Thanksgiving, where we may decide that that might be appropriate to extend the policy there as well.
Stephanie?
Michael, I think you actually just kind of spoke to what my question was towards the end of that, and I hate to bring up any more work for anyone, but could those be 2 separate policies? There be a break homework policy and then a religious homework policy? Just because, like you're saying, there's a certain time of the year where people are taking breaks as family that, some people are taking that break and not observing whatever that religious holiday is. You can have a Jewish family that's taking, Christmas break and not celebrating that and not, having that extra component to, like, not being able to do work or whatever. So maybe, does it make sense to separate and say, this is our break policy, and then additionally and separate, because I think that's a really touchy subject, the religious homework policy, because, like, as you said, some of those really important religious holidays for other religions are not going to fall on break time. So I don't know if those can be addressed in one policy. Does that make sense, or is that?
Oh, I think they can definitely be addressed in the same policy, but as different points within our homework policy. So we don't have to have 2. But we could have, you know, if it were decided that the winter break and the spring break were times of break from homework, that could be, and then we could have another statement about religious holidays that could either list them out or not, or just say, please be sensitive to, or any other kind of language.
Right.
And we can look for other samples of language for addressing the religious.
Because I think even calling those other breaks a religious break, I mean, we're already not doing that. Like you said, it's winter break and spring break. We're not calling it Easter break and Christmas break. So, yeah, I mean, just to demystify it a little bit, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would help clarify as well, yeah.
Anthony?
Just looking at the calendar, I would just ask that if we go back to committee, that we come back perhaps at the next board meeting to see if we can move this along. Otherwise, the Christmas break will be upon us. And, you know, all this, we'll miss.
Well, I mean, the committee will do what it can. It sounds like it's going to be a thorough job, so I'm sure they'll bring it back as soon as they, I hate to make it an action item. Michelle's got it.
I understand.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll bring it back as soon as they can.
It's better quality over
Yeah.
the timing,
Won't
but
be done before because this is November.
Yeah.
You get through 2 readings in December. Well,
Well,
I
we have
mean, yeah, technically maybe.
unless we, that's what I think
Yeah,
what Jim was
but
saying.
that's even the other issue of the break concept, and we're still kind of wrestling with the
I don't think the system, will crash if we don't pass this
Right,
policy.
right.
People will do what they've been
right
doing.
Been on the books
because
for-
we're even now talking more about the within the school period unofficial, unobserved religious days that minority observers may be taking. So, and I don't think it's that complicated. I think we could take this back to the teachers. It really won't be that much of a big deal because, in as much as Rebecca's like making me think now about, oh my God, and all the religions, we don't want to list them all because we might miss some, and then we'll be discriminating there. But if you think about it, if this is done on a teacher classroom basis, a teacher can figure out early on in the year who observes what and go by there, because. And not to single anyone out or identify anyone, but just to be able to respect their needs as the year goes on. And if you think about our small school and our small class sizes and how pretty darn homogenous we are, there's not going to be 8 different religions in one particular class that a teacher has to deal with. Probably like 3 at the most. So if we can make it clear that we're not adding bureaucracy, we're just having, as Michael said, the responsibility of this identification be on the teacher and not on the student to have to advocate for themselves. I think it's a lot easier than we're afraid it might
I'm
be.
sure the board appreciates that. Lisa?
No, I just wanted to say, I've been in the school system for 10 years, and I have to say, the teachers, I think, have been very sensitive to this issue, and I've never seen it as a problem before. Not to say that there isn't going to be a problem if we don't have a policy, but I think for the most part, the teachers are sensitive and have never really given a huge assignment over any of the breaks that were due the Monday after. So I think maybe we are making this more complicated because it's never been a problem. So this is just maybe avoiding one by writing it out as a policy. But I think the more general, the better, is just my opinion. And I've never seen it to be an issue before. So.
All right. Thank you. Michael?
To give you my own experience with why I've been interested in this policy, I think at the school where I teach, I did have a colleague who assigned over winter break a novel that was to be read and that they were to be tested on the day that students were returning. That obviously flew in the face of the policy that we had, and that teacher was told, you may not do that. You may have it the day after students return, but this was after many parent angry emails, very angry. How dare you, infringe on that time as a family that we would have. My son or my daughter was reading this book and didn't even know what was going to be on the assessment, and so it can avoid those very ugly situations that an administrator or teacher, quite frankly, shouldn't really have to deal with in a very, with, I think, a very reasonable solution. I think as a as a parent here, one of my own children was asked to have an assignment sent to a teacher during Thanksgiving, in fact, the day after Thanksgiving. So while I agree with you that 99% of teachers are going to be very, very reasonable and are not going to violate the policy, even without a policy in place, I'd like to see something there so that we can prevent that minority of really bad situations that can negatively impact the entire community.
All right, so the committee will take it back and bring it forward. I assume we'll come up with some acceptable language, and Lisa, you can be the last word on it. All right, anything else on that? All right, thank you, Michelle, I appreciate it. There is no action item. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you all.